have several classes go through this, and employers start to see the changes that are being made, that they'll get more and more excited about it, and you'll start to see more and more buzz surrounding the program.
Yeah, I think so too. Those were really good comments. Thank you.
In regards to that, like, I guess my first question is, who's your target market as far as the age group? Younger people, I'm assuming?
Our target, we believe, is 35 to 45-year-old executive track people, so people within a corporate role that they're really sort of being a step away from being going into a senior leadership role, but they have about 10 years, 15 years experience in the company. That's what we believe the target is. But
They have to have enough experience to bring to the table that they understand their focus. So you want someone who is, you know, if they're a marketing person, you want someone who has been around marketing for a while, or HR, if they're long enough to have developed some processes internally, but then you want them to, they're the ones who are looking at their company where they are right now and thinking, okay, what is the wave of the future for our company, and how are we going to have to shift or more for whatever we have to do to be competitive in the future. And so they're really kind of that group of people within your company that you believe are the next generation.
I mean, it sort of was you as principal. I mean, how do we find what you were, I mean, how do we find you?
Well, I mean, in looking back at, you know, when I was there, I mean, I was looked at as a threat, and people didn't like me there, and I doubt that anyone would elect me to go further into disruption mode and come back with even grand schemer ideas, you know.
You are very self-aware. Good for you.
And then if I'm the employer doing that, and I finally got someone who's been in this organization for 10 or 15 years, and they finally get a glimpse of what it's like outside of the walls, what are the chances of that person not coming back to the company because they realize how bad it was?
Well, I think that is definitely, probably, if I was a CEO, that would be something that's in the back of my mind, like I'm going to put this person through. But isn't that true of everything that they do? I mean, if you pay for someone's master's program, or if you pay for someone to go through ABI or leadership, you know, the Greater Des Moines Leadership Institute, you are connecting people, and you want them to be connected, and you do run the chance of.
Yeah, but to me that still feels safer than what you guys are doing.
And I think, well, to his point, I think that you are placing this potential disruptor with a startup.
Who
There
may
may
want
be a lot of, you know, a lot of angst that, hey,
Right.
I get to go work with the startup. Maybe that's what I want to do.
Well, do you?
So I guess part of that is, who are you marketing to? You know, because it's a different. You might be marketing different to an individual if you're trying to attract individuals, but you're going to, I think, take a different approach if you're trying to talk to the actual companies.
Good point. So, as a group, what do you think is the right approach?
If you set their expectation, you set the business owner's expectation that you're going to create a phenomenal employee that could get picked off by a competitor, and then it's up to the business owner to keep them on board. I think that's how businesses need to operate. They need people smarter than them in the rooms anyway. And I think you set their expectation and you say, this program could create an employee that your competition wants on board. I think that's a great program.
They do want to pay us though.
What's that? Yes.
Terry, do you have a comment?
My goal is always to have people that everybody else wants.
Okay.
That's always my goal.
I know, but you might be someone unique. I don't know.
But
Other
you want that
people?
type of person in your program.
Yeah, absolutely. I would support it.
Okay.
I guess kind of on Brad's point and this gentleman's point, I think one of the crucial things from the company's perspective is to get included in that bringing it back. How does the person, you know, bring that back? It's also, there's got to be something from the company side, you know, setting expectations, so that, I mean, I think in all reality, you're going to market to the individuals and the corporate with almost two different messages. I think you almost have to, because I think an individual, the corporation might have somebody else in mind, and the individual might have themselves in mind. I guess to me, there almost could be two different messages.
Well, I don't know how it works so much right now. I guess let me ask this question. Those of you who are in that mid-level, do you have your own professional development budget? Is there a professional development budget within a company? How is that working these days where if someone says, I really want to go through this at principal, do they have to go through a process? Is there a budget? How do we get to the people who control the budget to help either match or pay for this?
I work in government, but I know interfacing with businesses across the state, that during the recession, their professional development budgets got destroyed. And now that we've come out of the recession, they're trying to figure out where's the maximum value for our dollars, given that if we go into another recession, that's one of the easiest things to take out of the budget is professional development. You keep employment stagnant or static, if you will, and you don't do as much as you can for the employee from a professional development perspective. So I think the thing is, somebody asked a question at one juncture, is it smaller entities that we're looking at focusing on, is it larger entities that actually have a professional development budget that we're looking for? There's going to be a different equation for both of them.
I would say yes.
But yes to both.
Both.
Yeah, focusing. But the one thing, I know, I just recently went through the University of Iowa Executive MBA program. I wasn't sponsored by the state of Iowa, despite that being my employer. But the one thing, interfacing with 43 other students from Rockwell, Principal, Nationwide Insurance, John Deere, is that that employer has a very great expectation once somebody goes to an MBA program or professional program like this, that you're going to come back and that you're going to stay with them, that you're not going to fly the coop and go somewhere
Right.
else. And so, whether it's something like this, it's just merely $2,000, or something that's $50,000, there's a great set of expectations by employers. And then the last point I'd bring up is that the market. You have a massive market here for this type of person, mid-level, but you've got Iowa State, Drake, some of the community colleges doing different types of programs that try to mirror what you're talking about now. How do you differentiate yourself in the marketplace? It's a pivotal question.
I don't know that anyone else is doing it with a startup, are they?
As far as, that's the real keys. I mean, the keys that we have is you actually have, you are working there in a Montessori-ish environment. You are actually working as part of an actual operating company where there is an actual impact on what you're doing. We do believe that experiential learning piece. We've not seen anyone else do it, so if someone else is less, please, we'd love to hear about it earlier than later. How we actually bring that piece out is going to be, I guess, we think that's incredibly valuable. If it is, we need to know how do we make sure that's clear. Because if we do just look like another offering, we're going to lose. If we look like another offering, we will not win.
Phil, you had a comment that.
Yeah, and I came in just a touch late, so I might not have picked up everything I need to pick up to be really smart here, but it seems like to mitigate against some of the comments I'm hearing, if a bunch of people are sitting around at an executive table rubbing their chins, trying to decide how to be more inventive, and how to get key employers involved, it seems like they would have already come up with a couple of things that they'd like to invest in. So maybe you could add an element that would match the executive team with the person they're putting through the program and give them a couple of opportunities at the beginning of this. So the executives could match up the goals with the person going through the program, and then you could add a check-in with them, sort of how you doing. So it's not just a cold, send the person away and hope they come back with gold in their backpack. You're sort of doing internal mentoring check-in.
Okay.
So that you know that you're keeping up with each other.
Maybe a reverse mentoring as well, teaching the executive what you're doing.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, to implement that, what about something we require a sponsored mentor from the company? So whether or not the company pays, they do have to have a sponsoring mentor, someone who's willing to work with them in the company to keep one foot in both. Is that the type of thing you might be?
Yeah.
I think you gotta be careful on who it is.
Well, would that person then be the one that would maybe do the checkpoints? And so they'd be coming with their student and hearing about the startup and seeing the checkpoints, and then they wouldn't actually be going through the class, but they'd be coming for that hour, 2-hour checkpoint halfway through the class or maybe twice during the class, and then be able to help embed that in their company when the student comes back. That's a good idea.
The sorry, Tim.
Yeah, so basic question, thinking about marketing again. Would you say you're most interested in bringing experienced people and decision making to the startups, or are you most interested in bringing the innovators and the disruptors back to the larger companies? I mean, where's most of the emphasis going to be? And then how are you going to pitch that as the value proposition to the people or to the companies that pay for it? I can't quite tell where the emphasis is.
The other side of this equation is, if I'm a startup, how do I actually, if you're seeing with a startup with brand new technology, or even just a twist in technology, how do you get in the door? People are going to be slamming the door on you are the people who can't see it differently. Those are the ones that we want. So really when we're looking at, the point is to essentially bring one end of the spectrum, which is, this is the way the company always does it. We really want them over the actual person who's already change agent in some ways. I guess to my desire. I don't know if that's correct though. What I'm hoping we can do with this program is essentially be teaching, here's one we think is right and we want to be changing, we want to be doing something different, but this is the way they always look. How can we bring that person in and hopefully have them moving closer to the center? I don't know if I went around your Mr. question though. Is that you're looking at me like I completely described it.
If I heard you right, you're trying to find out, are we focusing on the startup or are we focusing on the benefit that's going to come back to the people who go
Or
through?
you're trying to do both. I mean,
And as I say, I think the answer is it's both, and it has to answer the question of what's in this for me, for both of them. So the startup doesn't want to be at the table if they're not going to have experienced people helping them, because it's a waste of time if they don't. And the people who are going through the class are going to be asking, well, what's in it for me? And it's going to be coming from two different prongs. The individual, who's going to be giving up some of their time to go through it, and the employer, who's going to either be matching, encouraging, or paying for that employee to go through. So we need to probably do a better job of answering those questions in our marketing material.
At only $2,000, do you need a sponsor? Most 35 to 45-year-olds should be able to figure out a way to come up with $2,000 if they really want it. And without involving the employee, you don't have to worry about every other Friday being off and just going back and having them being accountable to the actual meetings and all this, worrying about, is this person going to benefit my company or is this going to leave?
I mean, if you're going to be cynical like me, I guess from my perspective, if you're going to be in our target market, you're already making about 75 to 90, maybe you're a little over that.
Right.
If you can't find 2,000 and demonstrate that you're actually the person they need, you probably aren't the right person anyway.
Right.
So I do agree with you. Is there a need of a sponsor? I don't know, but I do know that a lot of the ABI companies are going in with the cost sharing there. So
Maybe raise the price.
Well, but ultimately, you're not going to. Why would you do it if your company's not supportive? Because if you don't have support from leadership at your company, then you come back to these ideas and they're not going to.
Get that sometimes, and you're adding a whole bunch of steps to the process.
I believe that if an individual wants to go through this themselves, they should be able to. And I guess I don't agree that your company, because maybe you won't go back to that company.
Right.
I mean, maybe you will find something better, and that's what everybody's looking for in life, is the best possible job for them.
I think we are identifying the #1 challenge to marketing, which is we don't have, in a situation like this, we don't have any one target. I mean, there might be one target that might end up being better for us down the road. But at this point, I would say if the individual wants to go through, yes. If the person who's been at principal for 10 years wants to go through and they want to get the buy-in from their employer, then yes. And I would assume that Simpson wants to have the business community very supportive of this. So we need to be talking to the top executives of some of these businesses. Because the ultimate goal when we're talking with the Iowa Department of Economic Development is we need to be talking about innovation with our traditional companies as much as we're talking about innovation with our startup companies.
to Tim's point before Sean, sorry, I think with this presentation, our goal was to be, the presentation's goal is to be focused on the corporate side and the value to the corporation piece. I think through your question and through some of the discussion, it appears that part of that is I'm thinking through, and we'll watched again, it may not have been clear, it may have shifted a little bit on our target, but I agree that I think there is a difference if you're talking to a manager. There needs to be a different emphasis. We just don't know which ones are the drivers really, but I think I understand what you're saying.
Maybe if I put it this way, I think you may have trouble if you pitch this as a program that's disruptive to existing business that trains disruptors. If that's what you're saying.
And I don't, if that's the message that came across, that's not the message that we wanted, so we may need to hone that message, but this is not a disruptor. This is supposed to be something that they can take back to their company and help with identifying new trends that will be helpful within their company.
I think that was very clear. I think I heard that message completely now. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry to take
Couple
10
questions
times.
over here.
And Sean, you did.
So I was gonna say, I think probably if you elaborate more on that Xerox example, I mean, step one is kind of having the top executives say we need to be more innovative. And if they have the buy-in to that, then they'll look at, let's send our employees off to this, invest in them. It's worth doing it. Is that kind of what you're trying to get with that example?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's your audience, is companies that want to innovate.
Right.
People in companies that want to innovate. And that's why I see it as, I'm not as worried about the companies who don't want to innovate because they're not going to do these things anyway. I don't know.
But I don't think you're ever gonna find a top executive who says, we're not here to innovate. You're
Right.
not gonna find any, and you're not gonna have a problem talking to the executives to get their buy-in. Your problem is gonna come from the middle management and the people are going to this that are responsible to, because now they're out, they're not gonna be there every other Friday. They may be tired and not being able to, at the top of their game, to work, their mind may be somewhere else. And it's those middle management or the implementers that really is gonna be the toughest people to convince. The executives, they're all gonna be like, oh yeah, this is amazing, this is great. But when you actually get down to implementation, whose hours are you taking away from? Whose energy are you taking away from? And these are the people who have a hard time with change, is below the middle management, because they don't wanna see someone coming up as a threat to their position. At least that's what I've seen, a principal who has a couple innovative
Right.
programs already in process with them.
I think a lot of it has to do with where your point of reference is coming from too. I mean, if you're looking at a principal versus a company of 40 people, that middle management is eliminated. So then your executives, that's exactly who the person is reporting to. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interesting nuances there.
I'm not, and I guess I don't think Principal and Wellmark, although I've used them in our examples, I don't think that's really our target market. I think we'll have a much harder sale there. I think that you're looking at the same problem where they do have well-developed development programs that get them to have someone look the same way they want to. I think ideally we want to be part of that process someday, or have what we're doing be an element of it. But I guess to hit your point, I wouldn't be making sales calls Principal, to be honest. I think there are real sales call places, hopefully CenturyLink, but apart from CenturyLink, we'd be looking at really your real meat of the ABI space. You're talking about a few hundred individuals, large enough to know that they need executives that are that have hands-on, they need to know what the line is doing, but not large enough to have their whole process
Internal.
either correct or internal. If they can send them to another facility and do a 5-week training course, they're probably not in our wheelhouse. So I think really we're looking at the sort of that middle third to the fifth, sixth of ABI is really where I think our wheelhouse is going to be. So I don't know if I was trying not to be offensive to anyone, but I just Principal's probably not going to be for us. I think hopefully in a few years, but right now I don't know if we'll hit that.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry.
There's a question right here. He's been waiting patiently.
This goes back a little bit, but I don't think any of the other schools are doing this. So when we kind of talk about continuing ed options from Iowa and Iowa State things, those are management training things. This is not management training. This is specialty in your field, right? You're building on your strengths and you're getting a chance. It's almost a laboratory experiment outside of the office walls where you get to focus on, if I were to take everything I learned at CenturyLink in marketing and focus that on a different company in a different field, what can I learn from that? So I think maybe that's part of your positioning, separate from just saying like, this is your next year of leaders. That tends to be MBA, that's management training. It's a completely different thing from this. So I think that might help kind of differentiate some of the other things. The venture school that somebody talked about, like, that's a different space completely.